Well, it's 10:30-ish, and I'm just pulled into the parking lot of Sprouts. I was too early to start at the last parking lot, and obviously over a half hour late starting in this one. But I've got a treat for us this morning, I think. It was originally titled A Crowleymass Carol, a ghost story. And it was an address that I gave at an OTO national or regional convention of some kind a few years back. And as I'm putting stuff away and gathering stuff and unpacking things continually, I ran across it. And it wasn't delivered on Crowleymass, which is Crowley's birthday, but it was a play on words on the Dickens story, A Christmas Carol. So, but it's self-explanatory. So let me just begin here. A Crowleymass tale. Excuse me. A Crowleymass Carol, a ghost story by Lon Milo DuQuette. Crowley was dead, to begin with. There's no doubt whatsoever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Old Crow was dead as a doornail. And that was sort of in parentheses, like it was a quote from Dickens. I would apologize to Charles Dickens for stealing and mutating his title and story opening. But Dickens is dead, and I wanted to make a little point. That is, even though the name Aleister Crowley is today known all over the world, even though his writings are in print and circulated in infinitely greater numbers and translations than during his lifetime, and even though at least 2 of his experimental magical orders can now proudly boast vastly more adherents and members than at any time during his 72 short years in this dimension, even though his religious philosophy of Thelema has spread around the globe in a variety of forms and interpretations, Aleister Crowley the man, Aleister Crowley the Homo sapien, Aleister Crowley the mammal, Edward Alexander Crowley, the carbon-based life form, is dead. Dead as a doornail. Yet, and you knew there'd be a yet, yet we who call ourselves Thelemites, and for anyone who's intrigued by the life and career of this fascinating character, indeed for anyone who has read the name, heard a rumor, formed an opinion, or made a judgment, no matter how incomplete, fanciful, unfair, or misinformed that judgment may be, concerning any aspect of the man's life, for all of us, Aleister Crowley is very much alive. And it is we who are creating him in our image. It is we who are breathing life into a living miniature, sepia-toned superhero action figure incarnation of Aleister Crowley. Like a million separate Dr. Frankenstein screaming, "Alive! It's alive!" We each unnaturally reanimate our own private version of Crowley's shell with the lightning bolts of our projected dreams and fears, our own expectations and aspirations, our own momentary ideals and ethics. We see how he breaks the straps and rises from the table. See how he struts back and forth across the stage of our crudely imagined reconstruction of history. See him illuminated by the strobing Tesla coil of our own fleeting interpretation of the ever-shifting purpose that our version of his character might play in the drama, tragedy, comedy of our own existence. Our dear friend and brother Richard Kaczynski has written what I consider to be the finest, most accurate, most comprehensive biography of Crowley ever written, Per de Rabo, The Life of Aleister Crowley. Not only does Richard thoroughly detail the events of Crowley's life and careers, he painstakingly goes to great lengths to place these events in the context of the times, and gives us an insight into the lives of other important characters who were interacting with Crowley and who were influencing his thinking at any given point in his life. Richard's book, in my opinion, comes close as humanly possible to capturing the objective reality of Aleister Crowley's life. Comes close as humanly possible to crystallizing empirical history. It is a masterpiece, and I predict it will remain the definitive biography of Crowley for the ages. But ultimately, no biography is capable of capturing the objective reality or the spiritual significance of its subject's life, because objective reality itself is uncapturable. In the final analysis, all biographies, even Dr. Kaczynski's, are works of fiction. And nobody's opinion of Aleister Crowley, nobody's opinion about the true meaning of the Book of the Law, or the Law of Thelema, or magic, or whether Crowley was a socialist or a fascist, or which OTO or AA is legitimate. Nobody's opinion is based on objective reality. I know how I react when an evangelical Christian attempts to justify his or her embrace of their faith by referring to the Genesis creation story, or Adam and Eve, or Moses, or even the writings of Paul. I just want to say to them, if your confidence in the underlying spiritual truths of your faith is so weak you need to prop them up by an objective historical event, then I'm afraid, my friend, you are treading on very thin ice. Can't you get a big enough spiritual kick out of the awesome, multifaceted spiritual truth and truths behind your myths? Aleister Crowley, the man, is dead. Dead as a doornail. But Aleister Crowley, the magus, the magician, the myth, becomes more alive with every heartbeat. Now, of course, we have all sorts of evidence of the objective existence of our beloved beast. But as none of us here today ever met the man, he is, for all intent and purposes, a fictional character, a myth. Almost 20 years ago, and I think this is probably close to 30 now, I was contacted by an acquaintance who at the time worked for, I believe it was Sony Pictures. It was a studio that at the time was being part of a conglomerate that was readjusted. But at the time, I think it was Sony. He asked if I'd be interested in writing a screenplay about Aleister Crowley. He said it was to be a fantasy, not a serious attempt at a biography or anything too preachy, but it should have lots of magic and feature Crowley's outrageous and liberated personal character. He made a generous offer, and as I was financially strapped, as I always am, I agreed. I thought it'd be fun to cover the period of time around 1900 to 1904 and the breakup of the Golden Dawn. That way I could have other recognizable characters like MacGregor and Moynier Mathers, Yeats, and the colorful Golden Dawn folks, and even rumors like Bram Stoker and things like that. With my friend's help with keeping things cinematically viable, and with the help of the Final Draft Professional Screenwriters computer program, it really is awesome. It's just in like 5 minutes, your just stream of consciousness turns into a script. I'm digressing here. If you're thinking about writing a screenplay, I haven't seen the newest versions of Final Draft, but it's very intuitive and easy to learn. But anyway, I digress. With the help of the Final Draft computer program, I created what I thought was something that was at least worthy of the money I was paid. It must have been, because the work was optioned by a film production company who obtained a letter of intent from Alan Rickman to play Crowley, of course. Of course, nothing came of it. About 10 years later, my same friend called me back and said that a British film company was interested in the property, but because of their funding from the then British Film Council, or the UK Film Council, I think it was really called, all the principals of the company, including the screenwriters, must be British or Commonwealth citizens. But there would be no such restriction if the screenplay was adapted from a novel that they were willing to give, and that they were willing to give the novel writer the screenwriter's royalty points, or the equivalent of the screenwriter's royalty points. So, all I had to do was to turn my screenplay into a novel that could be turned into a screenplay. So I did. And nothing came of that either. Now, why am I telling you this sad story of the life of the starving writer? Because in the novel, which is published as Aleister Crowley, Revolt of the Magician. Oh, yeah. By the way, it's on Amazon. Please buy it. You don't have to read it, okay? But please buy it. Every year I get pennies in royalties for it. But every penny helps. But anyway, in this book, I treat Aleister Crowley as a fictional character, a myth. And in the opening sequence, I set the stage for a demonstration of how the myth can be more real than fragile history it is based upon. And with your permission, I will read it. And then I go on to read the very short chapter that's called Funerals and Fairy Tales. But that is something I think I must save for tomorrow, because I started late and our time is going over, and I have to run inside house and wash my hands, as we say, or I have to go out and help the vicar turn his bike around. Anyway, sorry I'm late, but you know it's Tuesday. Hopefully I'll be right on time tomorrow, and I hope you've enjoyed this Crowleymass carol. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.